Hi there, Megan. Thanks for opting into the video critique. I'm just opening your magazine spread, and you look like you're off to a really good start. I'm liking it a lot. My first thought when I looked at this was I love that this is a full bleed. I mean, it has this little bit of color box down here, which is fine. It might be even more impactful, honestly, if you could have the whole page be a full bleed. That's just so powerful when you look at a design and it looks like that. If you do decide to keep it, I would just make sure this box is pulled all the way off. It looks like it stops a tiny bit right here. I really like the placement of this over the trees. It's very interesting. Your title looks good. There's contrast with size, which is really nice. I will say, usually most of the time, I'm not a huge fan of stroke, and this looks like you might have some kind of drop shadow on the body copy down here. It is difficult to read, honestly. It's a little bit harder on your eye, especially with all the light color you have in the background. And I know you've probably done this to make it as legible as possible. And so I think it's a good workaround. It's just still not ideal. You could play around with maybe cropping the image, just having it end right, or maybe have it end down here and maybe just 2 paragraphs in actual white space or pink. I think for legibility, that would probably be the way to go, is maybe just have this bottom 4th or so, maybe 5th of the page, and then like 2 paragraphs. You know how they'll do that a lot of magazine spreads. They'll have, or even just one paragraph here to kind of tease you, but it could be larger. You could play around with that if you want to keep this image big. If you want to keep the image big and all the way off the page, you could just have the first paragraph and maybe have it right here in 2 to 3 times the normal font size. Try that, see if you like it. If you don't, maybe you might need to crop the image up a little bit more. Okay, so those are a few ideas. I like that you're attributing the image from a, well, I guess that's a good route to go. I was like, I don't know if you necessarily need to do that, but it's better to get in the habit of it than not. This page, you've done a really good job with your contrasting typefaces. Those look nice. Make sure your subheadings are in the right place. This one looks like it's in the middle of a paragraph, so we want to make sure that it's actually in the correct place. I'm guessing down here is where it actually goes. Your pull quote looks really good. I would reformat a tiny bit so you don't have a widow on this very bottom line. Maybe this Christ could bump down and then every virtue could be your last line. I am okay with you centering something in a pull quote, especially when it's in a circle. I think that looks best, even though usually we recommend not centering. But a centered circle, centered on the page with a centered pull quote will probably look good. Let me see if there's anything else. I would probably remove these footnotes just for a design perspective. And I do feel like this photo attribution is taking away from the design because my eye is going here. I would probably, if you really want to do that, maybe tuck it over here somewhere. And you could just say additional photos or photos by Megan McBride. You have this one here. Photos on page 2 and 3 by Megan McBride. I don't know, play around with it a little bit, but it's not my favorite having it in the middle of the page like this. It's kind of detracting from the image itself. I might make this image a little bit bigger, kind of see if that looks good, and then I would make sure this with the light of Christ is staying with this paragraph. You have this as an orphan when there's only a few lines at the top of a column, or a few words at the top of a column, and so I would try to avoid doing that. The only other thing that might be nice is trying to find a little bit of opportunity to introduce some more white space. Okay, so you could maybe make your columns just a little bit narrower. See how this gutter is not very wide? A little bit of a narrower gutter would be nice. You could even pull them down a little bit more or up a little bit more. with these shapes that you have at the top of the bottom and the page, top and the bottom of the page, they look good, but they are trapping the white space a little bit. Okay, I would probably put continued on page 4 right over here as opposed to left, and maybe a little bit smaller since my eye is going to it. We don't necessarily want the eye to go to it. Okay. So yeah, I'm wondering if I like this line, but it is trapping the white space. You definitely need to interject more white space in other areas if you're going to keep an element like this that's boxing you in at the top of the bottom of the page, and then you have so much written content as well. Okay, so you really are off to a good start. Just a few things, interjecting more white space, double checking for any issues in terms of the formatting, figuring out how to work around the kind of legibility issue we're having on this first page is probably the biggest design issue that you need to address. But you're definitely on the right track. It's looking good overall, and I hope that you have a good week making the changes that you need to. Okay, thanks, Megan.